means you go. Thank you. And welcome everyone. This is the Madison Academy Community Center Building Committee. And this is our regular scheduled set of meetings. And the first thing on the agenda is always public comment. And Jeannie, do you have anyone on who from the public who raises their hand who would like to make any comments?
Yes, William Stableford would like to make a comment. I will promote him.
Okay, Bill, if you can hear me. Nope, okay.
Okay, just a quick comment. We on the advisory committee are this week putting the finishing touches on a summary booklet of all of our findings. And we're going to hope to have it printed early next week. We want to make enough copies for everyone on your committee to have a copy, plus Mark and Tom. So just a question, what is the best way to get a printed copy to all of you? There will also be a web link for a digital copy digital copy that will enable a little more movement through the document. But we want all of you to have a printed copy. So how can we get those distributed?
How big is the book, Bill?
We hope to keep it like 10 or 12 pages, it will be in a spiral bound notebook.
Yeah, I personally don't need a paper copy. I'm happy to have the electronic version, save a tree.
Okay.
Don't you, Bill, you could leave them in town hall, and anyone who needs them can go pick them up.
I could leave them in Jeannie's office. But Mark and Tom, how can we get a copy to you guys?
Well, if you want to just, well, again, you can just email me the link. I don't need a hard copy either. If I need to print it out, Bill, I'll print it out. And the same for Tom. I mean, the only thing I would suggest is if you want to drop it off at our office, you know where we are.
Yeah,
you can drop it off. But if you just email me the information, I'll print it out myself.
Okay. The online digital copy will enable you to access more features in the booklet. So I'll send a copy to Joe, and then he can forward it to all of you. Is that fair enough?
Fair enough.
Sure.
Okay.
And would this be something that would be for public view also?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So I
want to get a copy to all of the selectmen, to the Board of Finance, perhaps to the Board of Education, because the school, the high school kids did make contributions, and then we're going to make it available to the public. Yes.
Okay. Okay.
So that's it. Thank you.
Having it in a town hall would be a place that the public could get it to. Okay.
Yep. Thank you.
Jeannie, any other participants from the public with a raised hand? Thank you, Bill.
Not at this time.
Okay. The next item would be the approval of the regular meeting minutes from March 13th. Does anybody are there any comments or corrections on that, on those minutes? I have one comment, if no one else does. Item 3, the middle paragraph, Ann Kelly asked if the materials that supported the referendum referenced a commercial kitchen, and they did not. In the grant application, Peggy's most recent one, Peggy wrote a letter and it said commercial kitchen.
My question referred specifically to what did the voters approve?
I think we answered that question here, and I don't know if we want to make a reference of it, but we will also face the voters again at some point, who will ask, and they may or may not be privy to that grant application. And the grant application doesn't agree with with this statement. So we create a difference between a document that we are requesting a grant application, we're requesting a grant application, and our not only our minutes, but the what we have from the voters. So Al, this is more of a maybe something that would maybe more in your realm than ours.
Joe, what do you think we should do at this point? What is what would you like to see happen?
I would like to refer any further questions about a commercial kitchen into the undecided bucket. And as we go through the design of the facility and we appropriate the budget dollars in certain buckets, that this question be punted should it come up again.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think the term commercial kitchen means different things to different people, and to town officials, it has a very precise meaning. So I think it's a term that's been used loosely, and let's try to sharpen up our use in the future.
Okay. And any other questions, send them to the building committee, and we will give them an answer that says that is something that's undefined and currently undecided. The extent at which we will be installing a kitchen in the academy. Fair enough, everyone? So in case you're any other references to commercial kitchen.
Joe, one other point of clarification. I'm just taking another quick look at them now. Item number 6, scheduling visits to nearby town community centers. My understanding was that you and Eileen were just calling to set up times that you would broadcast to the group, and if we were able to make it, we would attend those sessions. Or was the intention that only you would go and only Eileen would go to those community centers?
The intention, if I recall, was that Eileen and I would set up a time that we believed might be good for other people, but would be definitely good for each of us individually. And then everyone would be invited, and then anyone who could make it would come. I have one response so far in Wyndham, and I guess it's the mayor there. Anyway, he sent back to give him a call and set up a time on the phone rather than try to do this in email. And we would that would be my intent, that I would try to set it at a time that was convenient for him, where I could make it, and I would try to get a time that may be possible for other people to make it. And that's probably no time. I mean, weekends would interfere with things, and daytimes for people who work, and evenings for people who like their evenings to themselves, and and really like the 5:30 meetings because they don't intrude on too deeply into their personal time. So, but that is the intent.
So I think we just need to update the notes then to say that you and Eileen will schedule visits for the committee.
Yes, schedule instead of visit. Yeah, you got it. Eileen, are you okay with that? So I have a motion to approve as amended, and the amendments will be in 6 instead of visit. We'll schedule, and the item 3. I don't think we need to change item 3 because I think item 3 is correct. The thing on the referendum reference a commercial kitchen, and it did not. I think that is correct as it stands. I think we only have to be careful going forward. And I don't think we need that in the minutes. I mean. No, everybody, yes, shaking their heads, good.
Yep.
Okay, moving on, the Collier's report.
We need to vote on that, right? We need to vote to
Oh,
approve
that's
it.
right. We need to vote. Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes as amended in item 6?
I make that motion.
Second.
I'll
That's
second.
I got Ann on tape that she seconds. Any further discussion? Approved? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. We have 4.
Aye.
Oh, David, we have 5. Okay. Unanimous with 5. If you're wondering who the guy in the white shirt is, in the middle of your screen there, John, where he's about to be introduced. That's the next item on the agenda by Mark.
Thank you, Joe. So, if you recall from the interview we had a gentleman by the name of Adam Levitas proposed as our project manager. Adam's currently working on the school projects in Madison, as well as a few other projects. And one of the projects that we thought was going to be finishing is not. It's dragging on a lot longer than we originally anticipated. And I desperately needed to get somebody in to assist me in managing the project. And John's a senior project manager with our firm. He's been with our firm for 3 years and has the capacity to take on this project with my support. I mean, I'll always be here. I'm not going anywhere. So I brought Dave and Joe in to meet with myself and John yesterday. So they had a kind of an early introduction to John where he could explain or introduce himself and, talk about his experiences. And with their blessing, I'm bringing John here tonight to introduce him to you all, again, as our proposed project manager moving forward. So John, I don't know if you want to just give a quick introduction to yourself.
Sure. Good evening, everybody. As Mark said, my name is John Koplis, Senior Project Manager here at Colliers. And I have been with Colliers a little bit over 3 years and have worked on a couple of different school projects. I've actually worked with Aiden, ironically, on a couple of projects recently at Conn College. And I'm looking forward to assisting Mark on this project here in Madison.
So we're getting John indoctrinated fairly quickly. He's been going through all of the project information that we've developed over the many years. We had a meeting with Tom Perry and his team last week to talk about the next steps. John and I went to the building Monday morning, bright and early, and met with Austin and Scott. They just happened to be there, Austin and Scott and the QAM team, to walk around and get familiar with the building. Yeah, so he's getting brought up to speed fairly quickly. And again, so you'll see him at these meetings moving forward.
Any questions? Any questions for John from any of the panel members here?
Just logistically, so will we see both of you on the meetings and then John will do work behind the scenes? Or will
AJ,
Mark, will you come off of these meetings?
No, I plan on being at the meetings. John will be doing more of the heavy lifting behind the scenes and working with the architect and the other consultants. We talked about working groups previously, and we can talk about that again. He'll be the college representative for those meetings for the most part, but I'll continue to be a presence in these meetings. And I'll certainly be attending certain meetings throughout the life of the project. There's always big meetings, milestone meetings that happen that I'll be a part of.
Yeah, that's my main concern. I've John, I've it's nice to meet you, but Mark, I've always appreciated your insights as we're trying to make decisions and your perspective. So more great minds together is
Yeah, and
hopefully
that's what
going
it
to help
is.
make us better decisions.
Yeah, and I'd be remiss without mentioning, Judy Denny, who you met at the interviews for the architects, our assistant project manager. She's still around helping us as well behind the scenes, so she'll be part of the team. So,
Okay, great. Thanks.
okay.
Anybody else? Any other questions for him?
So Joe, I'm prepared to just go through the Collier's report. I can,
One last thing. Jeannie, you there, still there, listening?
I am here.
Okay, could you add John and to all the invitations to all these meetings and to the distribution of the minutes and any other general anything that Mark Skolenka would have been copied on? If you could add John to that distribution.
I will
Please.
do. Mark, can you just, or John, send me his email? So thank you.
I'll do that, Jeannie.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Okay, so in terms of the Collier's report, and I'll include the QAM report since Tom's not looks like joining us. So first and foremost, the contract was signed, sealed, and delivered to all parties. So thank you all for your thank you, Al,
Oh,
for your assistance in shepherding that through. So with the contract in hand, Tom has started his effort. So he started first. Again, we had a kickoff meeting, myself, John, Tom, and his team last week to just get the process going. The first thing he did was schedule meetings with Austin and Scott. So Austin to discuss the Beach and Rec program, and Scott to discuss the Youth and Family Services program. Again, both Austin and Scott know Tom from his prior work, so it's not too unfamiliar. Tom's team was out on site, and those meetings are, I think, this week, Thursday and Friday, end of this week. So John will be attending those meetings for Colliers. His team was out on site Monday to walk it. As I mentioned, he met with John and myself, Scott and Austin, and they were taking measurements. I think they were there most of the day. Austin, you were there letting them in and maybe locking up afterwards, with the intention of building the virtual model that they're going to use when developing concept designs. So when they're showing us concepts, and you might have already seen some of the imagery from the pre-referendum services, they'll build a model, a virtual model. So when we're talking about spaces, you'll be able to see it in 3D. So what they needed to do was take measurements and verify conditions for that. And then they also scheduled their site surveyor, or they're in the process of scheduling their site surveyor to go out to the site and do the survey work. So that is what QA&M has been doing. What John and I have been doing is, and I'm going to share my screen so you can see, and then I'll share this, I'll email this out to everybody. We created a milestone schedule. So we talked about this previously. We have two types of schedules in our world. We have what we call a macro schedule, which is really a linear, design, bid, construction, occupy, but that doesn't really, it's not a management schedule or a management tool. And what we have utilized successfully in the past is what we call a milestone schedule. You might have even seen parts and pieces of this when we were doing the architect selection. Remember the 1-step, 2-step process we had. So I took the 1-step process that we utilized and I expanded to now include the schematic design phase services. So what we list here are all of the meetings that we're going to have over the next few months. This is just schematic design phase, so February through the end of May. So we've got our building committee meetings, and so anytime an item is completed, we gray it out. So here we are today, line 22 in our building committee meeting. I've included the beach and rec programming meeting on Thursday, the youth and family services on Friday. We've got our next meeting on the 10th. We'll talk about working group meetings later, I think, or at some point. But I'll include those, and those dates are still to be determined. I included the community center tours. Again, I don't know when they're going to happen, but we'll add those to this schedule once they're scheduled. One of the things that we're going to have to do over the next couple of months is engage an estimating firm, an independent estimating firm. Since we're not using a construction manager, we're going to need an estimator to develop an estimate and help us control the cost of the design. So that's still be determined. So I added that line item in here. Again, what you see here with the circles are building committee meetings. And then towards the end of, starting in early May, and this is tentative, I've got to review this with Tom still, is we'll get the first set of drawings to be issued for estimating or pricing. So early May, we're going to suggest getting the schematic design drawings and specs, get estimates back a couple weeks later, have a reconciliation meeting, and then we'll work with the working group to review the estimates and come up with value engineering ideas. And then ultimately, it'll conclude with a building committee meeting to approve the project to move into the next phase or development. So again, this is it's a working, living, breathing document. But this is what John and I put together over the last few days to just sort of map out the first leg. And then we will add very similar deliverables for design development, which will include permitting, because at that point, you're going to start to go in front of some of the regulatory bodies in town. And again, we can always add things that, so if you want to have a public information meeting, you want to set up, an opportunity to share the progress with the community, we can do that a couple of times during the design phase, so they're aware of what's happening. But this is where we are right now with the schedule. And again, I'll email this out to everybody after the meeting. So that is what we've been doing. And I think I gave you everything that Tom's doing. Questions? You're on mute, Joe.
Do you want to talk about the working group meetings now?
Sure.
You got the floor.
So we had talked about setting up subcommittees, if you will, right? The first one that I'll talk about was we talked about the finance subcommittee, and that would be a smaller group of the building committee members to review in greater detail all of the financial information. Typically, those are invoices. And then once you get into construction, change orders. So the finance subcommittee working alongside Colliers and the design team reviews all of that information in greater detail. They're like hour-long meetings, usually during the day. Once the finance subcommittee signs off on the invoice or whatever the financial document is, it's brought to this committee as a financial package. And it usually comes with, okay, here's an invoice for QAM, or here's an invoice for Colliers, or here's an invoice for your contractor or change order. And it's got the blessing of the finance subcommittee. What that allows this committee to do is really streamline the approval process during that meeting versus having to go through and ask tons of questions. You can still ask questions, but it just generally makes the process move quicker, right? So if you have somebody like Ann or Eileen saying, yeah, we reviewed this and we're good with it. Well, once you guys are all comfortable with Ann and Eileen signing off on, $1.5 million invoice from a contractor, you'll approve it. Because I'm sure, Ann and Eileen or anybody else that's on the committee will do, their due diligence and scrutinize it and make sure that it's fair and representative of the services rendered. So we talked about that subcommittee. The other, and it's really not really a subcommittee, but the other group that is formed during the course of a project is what we call a working group. And that'll include, again, Colliers, the design team, and one or maybe two members of this committee to work alongside the project team to be a part of and listen to some of the detailed conversations that are happening during the course of design. So I talked about I talked about Tom and his team meeting with Scott and Austin over the next few days. Well, they're going to develop a program verification document or a program document. And what our working group will do is review that, right? So you'll have, and I'm just going to say Joe, because I'm looking at you, Joe may be on that working group with myself and John Copeless and the design team, and we'll sit in a room. It's usually during the day or virtual like this, and we'll talk about everything that we learned from the Austin and the Scott meetings. And Joe will be there like really a liaison between the building committee and the project team, again, to help guide and steer, the conversation. And then ultimately when the team comes to report, here's where we are from a programming perspective, Joe can say, I met with the team and, can give his, I don't want to say validation, but his what he's learned and what he can share with you all. So it's an effective way of keeping the building committee in lockstep with the project team, so that when we come to these meetings and we share this information, again, you're all welcome to ask any questions you want, but at least you've got somebody there that's part of your team representing you during these meetings. So again, program verification would be one thing. As the concept plan is being laid out, and Tom starts to put Austin's office here and Scott's office here and how they lay it out, and there's gonna be lots of conversations about conference rooms and offices and whatnot. Tom will come and present this to the committee, and Joe will say, yep, I was part of that, and he asked a bunch of really good questions about why did you put the conference room there, why did you put the office there, why did you put the entry door here, right, and blah 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 blah. Again, you'll all be allowed to ask any question you want and challenge anything that you see, but at least again you've got somebody from your committee that's part of the discussions. So Tom and I both agreed that we could probably get this working group scheduled probably the next week or so, maybe even next week, since we're already meeting with the team to come up with the program. So I guess we're looking for volunteers. Who wants to sacrifice an hour or two a week for the next 2 years?
I'll jump in on that, Mark.
Good. We got one. And again, the subjects, the topics obviously will change from week to week. If there's a topic that comes up, and was it Joe P, who has a background in environmental engineering?
Yes.
So we talked about, if we're talking about a specific topic that is relevant to anybody on this call, right? So he's got a background in environmental engineering, environmental science. We're talking about abatement strategies. Maybe Joe wants to be part of that, working group meeting and give his perspective. Again, we come and we present what we're doing to this committee, and Joe P can say, oh yeah, I was part of it and I agreed with this, or we made changes based upon that. And it just gives, hopefully, you all a level of comfort that, that you're being well represented.
Do I have a parliamentarian here? Do we need to vote on that? Do we need to vote on a setting up a subcommittee? Well, it's a working group, I guess it would be, not a subcommittee.
It would be a good idea if the minutes did reflect that, Joe.
Don't need a second. If I propose it, we can discuss it afterwards. I would propose that Dave and I become the permanent members of this working group, and that we have the ability to call on other members of the committee and possibly outside members to bring the some individual and pertinent expertise to the meetings if necessary.
Maybe I misunderstood Mark, but I thought it sounded like there was multiple different groups that had different agendas.
Yeah, one
So
is
you're saying the two of you would be
Well, one is-
the primaries for all of them?
well, one is the finance group, and that's Anne and Eileen, I believe. I don't, were there anyone else? Anne, Eileen, were the two
And
of you?
Joan,
Oh,
Joan,
okay. And that was set up, I think, either last meeting or before that. Maybe you missed that one. But there's
Yeah, I might have missed that one. Okay.
there's financial review, and then the working group for approval of design concepts.
You know, the only thing I'll say, AJ, to your point, and I've seen this, it doesn't happen all the time, but I have seen it. At some point, the design's going to evolve to interior finishes, paint colors, carpet colors, flooring, you know. I have seen subcommittees get arranged that are more focused on interior design, and there may be a segment of this building committee that would like to be on, so that could be a finishes subcommittee if, you know, there was enough interest from anybody who wanted to, you know. So if you, AJ, were really interested in being a, you know, a decision maker on color schemes and finishes, you're more than welcome to be on that finishes.
I wish I could. I can't even match my own clothes, but I would love to. Love to be a part of it. Yeah, I guess I thought there was like you needed someone to be sitting in on programming discussions and then someone to sit in on change order discussions. So I thought that was two separate
Yeah.
things, but that's all one group.
No. Change orders is part of finances. That's the.
Oh,
finance
that's part of
committee.
finance.
Yeah,
Got
so
it.
when I talked
Okay.
about, you know, reviewing invoices and pay applications and change orders, change orders is a big piece of that, and that's during construction, and that'll be, was it Joan, Ann, and Eileen that you said? Tom?
correct.
Okay, yeah, so those three will be heavily involved in reviewing change orders throughout the construction phase.
So, I mean,
Okay.
should we add AJ to the other committee then? Then everybody will at least be on one of these two committees to fill in as
long as
necessary.
it's not a quorum, I don't know what your, as long as you don't create a quorum situation, you could have, yeah, AJ, if he wants to be part of the working group, that's fine.
Wasn't four
that-
our quorum?
Yeah, 4 would make a quorum.
Right, so there's only 3 of us, so we can't, I think we're good.
And I think there's also, in talking to the fine detail of this, of the freedom of information, if there's a specific issue where there's not going to be a binding vote, and there were 4 people there, that doesn't make that doesn't break the FOA rules. Like, for instance, if 4 of us or 5 of us wanted to go on the tour, the Wyndham tour, which is the next one up, the one that's being discussed now, that's a specific issue. There will be project discussions, but there'll be there will be no decisions made at that time in that group. It's the specific purpose is to tour another facility and be able to find, you know, best practices from the people who've worked on it before. Okay.
Yeah, I'm
AJ?
happy to. Yeah, I don't feel a need to be on a committee necessarily, but if there was one that you would like me on, I'm happy to join it. But I'm happy to also just jump in if there's, you know, got a background in construction and when you were kind of talking about layouts and orientations and things like that, you know, you should have pretty good at offering perspectives there. So if there's those opportunities come up, happy to help however I can.
Well, we can do, AJ, is we'll let the working group know. I'll include you in the working group communications, right? And we'll obviously know in advance what the topic is, the agenda for the particular meeting. And if there's one that I want to be a participant in this, great. If not, then you don't have to. Same thing for you, Joe or Dave. You don't have to be there for all of these. If there's something, as long as one of you is at least there, you know, you're on vacation, you're gonna have, you know, things like that. But as long as there's at least one building committee member there, at least somebody can say, yeah, I was there when we talked about, you know, painting the building white. Not that that'll happen. but-
Yeah, I won't be there for that one. So I'll amend the motion to include Dave, myself, and AJ as invited members to that group. And also have the ability to bring in other members or other members of the community on an as needed special basis. And then I guess that's about as far as it goes. Is that within your vision, Mark and John, of the working group?
Yep, 100%.
Okay,
Yes.
so any other discussion? We get a show of hands for approval.
Aye.
Okay. So the format for the meetings, we had said would be generally in person if possible, but I don't know if we were gonna set up a Zoom with the from the town, or if we will simply phone in. It's a phone in type of, if you can't make it in person, it's a phone in. Does that, again, Mark, does that kind of meet your,
Yep.
what you say? Okay. Welcome,
We can start
Tom.
the Meeting now, Tom's here. Okay, everybody. Now we can start the meeting.
Hi, guys. I'm very sorry. The link I had, I didn't realize it didn't work. And then I was struggling with it. And then I asked Mark, I can't get in. Send me the link. And he's like, go on the website, dummy. And I'm like, oh, so.
That's okay,
Sorry.
Tom. Like any good OPM, I covered for you. I took care of your business. No, I gave them the QAM report, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. I talked about the 4 or 5 of us meeting a week or so ago to sort of kick things off. I talked about your team walking the building on Monday, meeting with Scott and Austin and John. Talked about your meetings that were scheduled for Thursday and Friday with Beach and Rec and Youth and Family Services.
That's correct.
And then talked about you scheduling the site survey services. So I don't know if there was anything else that you've been doing.
Yeah, so in regards to the survey, I came to terms with the consultant on the fee. I told them to proceed. They've been directed to proceed. They've got it on their schedule. I'll have more of an update on that probably by Monday. And I where the disagreement was between us and the surveyor was I wanted them to update the entire survey, the entire campus, not just directly adjacent to the building, but I needed topography adjacent to the building. So we got that straightened out and I've got that underway. And then just a report, we did field walk the building. We took a number of general dimensions to verify where our model, the original model that was created, is in relation to what the existing conditions are. And the good news is they weren't too far off. But we'll be making corrections to that model, and then we will have to do another field visit to take a more detailed assessment of the exterior openings and features. But we will be scheduling that in the short future.
I forgot, Tom, I did share with Tom and his team a lot of the existing information that I had for the building. So there were condition assessments that were done years ago. There were test pits that were done years ago. There was the original site survey that was done years ago. So a lot of that data I did share with Tom and his team, so he now has that and he can work off of that.
And does that include the information from Preston O'Neill on the abatement?
well, again, Tom's not doing anything with, other than he'll be coordinating with Fuss and O'Neill. So what'll happen from the environmental side is Tom's gonna come up with a plan that's gonna show what's gonna be demolished. And then the demolition plans will be submitted to Fuss and O'Neill for them to prepare abatement drawings to coincide with where their demolition activities are going to occur, as well as where it's not going to occur. So we have a lot of time. We already have an estimate from them for the abatement cost, so that's good. But we have a lot of time until we get the actual plans and specifications from Fuss and O'Neill that would go into Tom's package for bidding.
Anything else, Tom?
No, that's all, actually. It's good that we got this underway, and once we have the programming meetings and have a better understanding of those tenants' program needs, we'll do a layout and we'll work back and forth with the tenant to get that where they need it to be.
Tom, we talked about the establishment of a working group. And we had talked about that, a week or so ago when we met. And it looks like Joe and AJ and Dave are going to represent the town in those working groups. So we just need to figure out, and I'd like it to be a consistent day and time so that we can just plug it into our calendar. So myself and or John Copeless will be reaching out to you and Carolina or anybody else from the team to just get those scheduled. And then we'll work up the agenda on a week-to-week basis, and then they'll determine who will be there, if not all three of them.
Okay, sounds good.
I figured you want to do the programming conversations first with Scott and Austin before we met as a working group, and then maybe the first meeting is we're just sharing what you learned from those programming conversations.
Okay,
I also developed a schedule that I'll share with you and your team that just sort of maps out the schematic design period, taking us through the end of May. And the last 3 to 4 weeks is estimating and, reconciliation and value engineering and heavy, those types of, activities. But I'll share that with you and the rest of the team.
Is that, are we to the end of the reports?
Yes.
The liaison and committee members' remarks. Al, since you're the liaison, you can, if you have remarks, you can certainly bring them forward.
I have one thought for you. Your sister committee, the advisory committee, has reached their milestone of pretty much completing their information gathering. And as Bill Stableford indicated to you earlier in this meeting, they are about to publish what they've learned from the public and formally present that to you and to the Board of Selectmen. It is entirely possible that when the public sees what Bill's committee has reported that they found from the public, that some members of the public may start sounding off that they don't agree with whatever Bill's committee determined that the public wanted. That's all part of this process. And my suggestion to you, Mr. Chairman, is that this committee does not need to get into a back and forth with the public at this point about whether or not Bill's committee's report reflects every individual's view. I think there'll be plenty of time for that down the road after Mr. Arcari presents his thoughts. But I would just encourage the committee members to not feel it necessary to respond to members of the public who may feel that somehow Bill's committee didn't accurately reflect their own personal sentiment about the building. So as tempting as it is to get into a back and forth dialogue, it just would feel premature to me at this point in time, because this building committee has not yet made any decisions about what's going to be included and not included. So that's just a foretaste of my sense of what might happen when Bill's committee report gets into the public domain. Have I been clear with that? Is there anybody wondering what the heck I'm talking about?
I,
That's good.
just to let you know, we do have a sort of a monitoring on social media, so we're aware of what the public, and I know that social media is not always strict. But it's not exactly a scientific sample of public opinion, but we will monitor it, and we really don't have any intent on entering into a dialogue on public media. And if the individual members, if we get to the point where individual members, we would certainly be willing to do a town informational meeting in conjunction with Bill, so that we can talk about, where we are in the process, maybe what's, if it's in the future, what has been decided, and what of Bill's recommendation, is still we're still talking about.
That's all I had, Joe.
Okay. I did have a couple of, any other comments from any of the members? Anybody want to just comment? I had a couple of things on the upcoming meetings and the upcoming schedules. As I said, I do have the first contact with the Wyndham, with the Wyndham Community Center, and so I'll be I should be able to set a visit there. That would be, again, as we said earlier, where I would at least attempt to set a time, to agree on a time that the committee members would be able to, some additional committee members would be able to attend. And I also have some information, or a feeler out to the Rocky Hill, the contact at Rocky Hill. Our next additional comments, the next meeting is April 10th. That's going to be a regular Zoom meeting like this. The hybrid meetings start April 25th. That would be the following meeting. And that would be as many of the key members of the who can make it in person, and the schedule is set up. Everyone should have a schedule of what room it is, but they're in town hall. It's either the Hamanesset room or the meeting room A, I think it is, the fishbowl. And it alternates between, because we meet on Monday and a Tuesday. The Mondays are all in one and the Tuesdays are all in another, but that'll be published with the meeting. I will be on vacation beginning April 30th and be gone through May 22nd. I will miss the May 8th meeting, and Dave has agreed to chair that. And Dave, if I can, are you still listening? I hope. If I could impose on you to chair the May 23rd meeting, if I haven't already asked you. Because
Yes.
I'll be gone and arriving back sometime late on the 22nd. I don't think I'll be in any position to have prepared for the May 23rd meeting.
Sure.
And so we'll go from there. But again, both May 8th and May 23rd are hybrid meetings again. So we'll be the meetings for the rest of the year are scheduled as hybrids, with the expectation that everyone who can will be there in person.
Okay, got it, Joe.
Okay, thank you, Dave. Any other members, comments? Hearing none. Jeannie, any other public comment?
There are no raised hands.
Okay. Is Austin still with us? Jacqueline, Jeannie?
I do not see him on as a panelist anymore.
Yeah, he was on before, and I wanted to recognize him at some point if he had any questions, but or any comments, since he did join us, but
Oh, someone has raised their hand.
okay. Please make them advance them to a panelist, and
I am
we'll
trying.
take a comment.
There they go.
I have Kevin on, but you're on mute currently on mute, Kevin. If you take yourself off mute, and you can, this will be your opportunity to make a comment. Kevin, if you can hear me, at least raise your hand virtually. Okay, you can hear me. You are on mute. Do you have to unmute him, Jeannie?
No, he has to do that on his end.
Okay. Kevin, we've indicated that you can hear us, you have to be able to unmute on your end.
Bottom left corner of the screen.
If you'd like to make a comment, can you do it in the chat? And you can hear us?
You're okay, Al. That's not you. You fucking like me. Can you text in your comment or question?
He's indicated in the chat that he can't unmute.
Yeah.
Joe, this occasionally happens, and we ask people to send in an email with their comment if they're unable to somehow get onto the Zoom.
And if you could hear us, if you send in any meetings from March 16th, not on the website. We will have Jeannie check on that tomorrow, and we'll get back to you. The chat says the minutes for March 16th meeting not on the website. And I'm a little confused because we had a meeting on March 13th and we just approved the minutes. We would not have met on March 16th. Not this committee. Sorry, March 13th. The reason the March 13th minutes aren't on the website is we have, they were in draft, subject to approval until reviewed by someone. I know there's a new procedure out, but that's not in place yet. So the minutes, since we meet every 2 weeks, we review the minutes 2 weeks. We have the meeting, the minutes are written up, they're reviewed, published in draft form just to the members of the committee.
Joe, I'm going to interrupt you there. No, according to FOIA, we have 7 days from your meeting to publish on the website the draft minutes. And I'm 100% sure, pretty much, maybe 99% sure I sent them in to the website, and I will double check on that tomorrow.
Okay. Okay, so we'll leave that, Jeannie, for you to check on and respond. And Kevin, thank you for pointing that out. We will see where we will see how we will see how we responded and get back to you one way or the other. Thank you, Jeannie. Okay, hearing having no other panelists, no other comments. I'll move that we close the meeting, and thank you all. And we will see you in a couple of weeks in the same format. Take care, everyone.
Thank you. See you.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank
Bye-bye.
everybody. Stay safe, stay
Thanks
healthy.
all. Bye.